With former California Congresswoman Katie Hill and Democratic strategist and president of the O'Mara Strategy Group, Atima O'Mara. Welcome to you both. Katie, you first, simply because in California, your home state, mine as well, there have been some pretty challenging times on these campuses. Notably, UCLA last weekend saw some pretty bad actors there that were really disruptive and caused a lot of trouble.
Yeah, I mean, the protests are really throwing the Biden campaign on the back foot. He wants to talk about jobs and marijuana rescheduling, but the protests have dominated the news cycle for the past month. I think that, college administrators need to focus on de-escalation as much as possible, bringing in the police as a last resort, because it's very frequently going to make matters worse and galvanize other students who may not have even gotten involved. One of the mistakes, I believe, at UCLA is that the police were kept away when they should have gotten involved earlier with the counter protesters. It's an unfortunate reality that the protests have moved the conversation away from Gaza, where there's a real crushing humanitarian crisis, and instead have focused it on America's college campuses and the way that, Ivy League and often elite students are being treated by the police. That's not the most important issue at hand, and I hope that we can start to change the conversation.
Atima, the Biden campaign has been struggling with the youth vote. How does this scenario play into this?
Well, first, I definitely want to say that as I actually am an alum of the University of Virginia, so it's
Great
quite
school.
Surreal to see. It's a wonderful school, and I have wonderful memories of it. It is quite surreal to see this happening. These students are, protesting peacefully, and considering the trauma that this town and this area and this university have gone through in 2017, the police didn't show up as quickly to handle folks in carrying tiki torches, yelling "Jews will not replace us." So this is, I would definitely say, a disproportionate response. Switching quickly, though, to how this is affecting the Biden campaign. I think a response right now has been a little bit risky, because we need the youth vote. It's a key part of the Democratic coalition. I saw a comment earlier on CNN this morning saying, a lot of young people are not yet focused on the election. If they are, foreign policy is really not something that they're considering or as focused on it in large majority. And as somebody who actually for a living makes a priority of working with clients who focus on turning out parts of the key Democratic base, such as young voters, voters of color, you want to make sure that base of support is solid. So it is a gamble. It is a risk to dismiss any key part of the Democratic coalition, which is going to be the youth vote, especially when you have College Democrats of America going on the record to say, hey, it's getting challenging messaging in support of you. We are your biggest stalwarts on these campuses across the country, and it's getting harder and harder to talk about domestic policy and all of the accomplishments when this is going on. University of Virginia has a very strong College Democrats chapter.
Yeah.
So this is going to continue to be a challenge, and it's a gamble, and it could maybe work for Biden, right? But it could also blow back on House Democrats who need this youth vote to regain the House, and of course for the Senate Dems to retain the Senate.
Let me talk about a real hot button issue, another one, that being with you, Katie, as we turn to abortion. There is a reproductive rights group in Missouri that has collected enough signatures to advance a ballot measure enshrining reproductive rights now in the Missouri Constitution. How significant is this if another red state like Missouri puts abortion on the November ballot?
We've seen in states like Ohio and elsewhere that abortion ballot measures are a massive turnout booster. Right now, it's the top issue for 1 in 8 voters, according to polling. But I actually believe that there's underpolling with abortion as a motivating factor. I think it's going to be even stronger than we've seen. And that's showing up, in the last couple of years since Roe. Anytime that abortion is on the ballot, it is a booster for turnout. If Biden wins in November, I think it's going to be because of abortion largely, and that the biggest impact is going to be seen in states that also have abortion measures on the ballot. I don't know that he's going to win in Missouri, but I think that it could certainly help in a variety of ways. And the success of his campaign is largely going to depend on how well it can convince voters that Trump's recent backpedaling on abortion is a lie, and that further restrictions will become the norm under any kind of Republican leadership.
I mean, Atima, Missouri's been a Republican stronghold for decades now. To what extent do you think this could provide opportunity for Democrats in that state?
Yeah, I'll agree with Katie here that I think Missouri is a pretty dyed-in-the-wool Republican state at this point, especially, and I want to take a step back and talk about Republican voters here. There's a key portion of them, about 30%, who actually support abortion rights, who want to keep it legal. Unfortunately, they're also the same people who will vote for this ballot initiative, but then actually go out and vote for Josh Hawley, a committed anti-abortion evangelical zealot. And so putting that aside, what is the ground that Democrats can make up in Missouri? And that's going to be in, I think, key strategic areas. If I was advising campaigns there, it's where you've got folks who aren't as likely to turn out. We call them sometimes lower propensity, lower turnout voters who would be mobilized to come out. But the key thing is that they have to remember is a lot of these Democrats have to be supportive of abortion. They have to be willing to talk about it. The key to the victory in Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer and Michigan regaining the House, was that they talked about the ballot initiative. They talked about abortion rights and the things that they would do to continue to uphold and support it. Beshear did the same in Kentucky. He actually had a couple of areas where he picked up the margin. And here in Virginia, where I've done political work, we actually, even though there wasn't a ballot measure, there were Democrats in key districts that were talking about stopping Glenn Youngkin from passing anti-abortion initiatives. So that actually helped us regain the General Assembly here. So that has to go hand in hand if Democrats even want to pick up any major key wins that aren't the U.S. Senate in Missouri.
Okay, points well taken on all. Thank you, ladies, and especially for pivoting and dealing with the breaking news we had there from the University of Virginia. Your alma mater, Atima, well done.
Yes.
Great school. All right.
Yeah.
Katie, thank you so much. I'll see you both again soon. Appreciate you.